Yo, what's up, guys? Back from another video for you for Dano, man. And today, guys, I guess this is the creation of a new series, which is going to be called 4x4 Fridays, where basically every single Friday we're on 4x4 Mania doing a certain video. And today we're basically going to be judging out of all 6 cars I have in my garage right now, what one is going to be the best trophy truck. Going through 5 different tests to see if the Domination, the Yota, the Sentinel, the Journeyman, the full-size 5, and the G8K to see which one is the best trophy truck in the game, going through tests, seeing which one's the best. But without further ado, let's head into the first category. Let's do it. And a quick disclaimer, this is how the point system works. First place 6 points, second place 5 points, and so on until 6th place gets the eventual 1 point. Where all 6 trophy trucks will be put to the test in category 1, straight speed. Now category 1 is basically just the simple drag race, and in 6th place, the slowest car to do it is the Sentinel, sadly, where he reaches a time of 8.931 seconds. 5th place is a little bit of a surprise to me, because the 2-point car is the Domination. Now, I would have thought the Domination would have been absolute speedster here, but turns out the Domination with just simple specs is 8.73 seconds. 4th place with 3 points is the Yota, kind of expected to be in this place, where this car, one of the more well-known, more old cars, gets a time of 8.6 seconds flat. Now in 3rd place, the newest car in the game with 4 points is the Journeyman. Now this car gets quite a fast time of 8.465 seconds. And now in 2nd place, sadly, just missing out by 0.4 of a second is the G8K, where he gets the 5 points, 2nd place, with a time of 7.864. And absolutely destroying 2nd place in 1st is the full-size 5, getting the eventual 6 points. Now this car does it in a blistering time of 7.464 seconds, putting itself on top on the leaderboard. Heading straight into category 2, which is speed on the dirt with jumps. Now this is basically just a drag race along the main straight of the dirt, where the Yota comes last place with 1 point. The Yota does it in a time of 8.44 seconds and gets itself the 1 point. In 5th place is the Domination. I also expected this car to kind of get a bit higher, but this car gets the 2 points and the 5th place with a time of 8.39 seconds. Now the next car on the list in 4th place is the Sentinel with 3 points. Now you can probably see that there's a similar trend here with the drag race, that basically all the cars that did well in the drag race did well in this race, where the Sentinel got 8.07 seconds. In 3rd place, 4 points, the Journeyman, pretty consistent trophy truck. Not necessarily the fastest car, but gets the job done with 8.01 seconds. Now the next 2 cars get under the 8-second mark for this drag race, and in 2nd place is the G8K yet again with a time of 7.89 seconds. And pretty obviously in 1st place is the full-size 5, getting the 6 points and the 2nd win in a row in the 2nd category. Now this car only just beats out the G8K with a time of 7.86 seconds, leading the way through category 2, heading into category 3, which is cornering. Basically for cornering, I have just extracted all the footage from 1 lap of each car and basically taken the footage from each corner on the track, where the Yota gets last place, sadly, with 1 point again. Now the only issue about the Yota, which is seen here, is the speed that it comes out of the corners. It comes into the corners fine at a good speed. The drifting's fine, it's just the speed that it comes out of the corners is really just not adequate for the racing. And that's kind of why I've ranked it in last with a 5 out of 10 overall score throughout all the corners on the track. 5th place with 2 points is the Sentinel. Now pretty much any car from here has had good cornering, good speed out of the corners. The Sentinel is actually pretty fast out of the corners, definitely faster than the Yota, but its issue is it's too jerky in the corners, as you can see here. It's basically like the car's drifting twice around the corners, which basically kind of leads to an issue where it basically deducts points because the amount of speed it's losing around the corners, but it still can keep a higher speed than the Yota, giving it a 6.5 out of 10 overall score on the drifting. 4th place, 3 points, is the Journeyman, kind of dropping a place from the last 2 tests to now. Gets the 3 points this time. The Journeyman is very consistent with the corners. It's a car that takes a bit less skill to be able to hit the corners. You basically just hit the handbrake or whatever and it does the job. It is also still a tad too slow when it comes out of the corners. And sometimes when you hit the handbrake, it doesn't exactly turn the right way you want it to. Giving an 8 out of 10 overall on the cornering. In third place with 4 points is the full-size 5. Kind of got demoted since the last 2 rounds that we've seen. The only reason it is because basically this car has the right speed, it has great cornering, but the issue is it's a lot harder to hit cornering than all the other cars ahead of it. This car is a lot faster, doesn't have the best handling compared to all the other cars on this list, but it is a very, very, very good car, giving an 8.5 out of 10 overall on this list. Now in second, a very big surprise here is the Domination. Probably the best corner I've ever seen in my life in 404 Mania. This car just never misses when it comes to the corners. Every single corner is perfect. Its only issue, which I stated with the Yota, is the speed out of the corners. It is faster than the Yota out of the corners, but it's still quite slow when it comes out of the corners. But the cornering like this is absolutely immaculate, which basically gives it an overall score of 9 out of 10 overall. Putting it in second place, which is a great up from the previous 2 events. Now in first place, the G8K, kind of expected here. The G8K, I tell you what, is just some other car when it comes to cornering. Gets perfect speed when it comes out of cornering. The acceleration is there. The cornering is there. This car is absolutely beautiful. The footage that I've used may not be the best footage of the cornering, but trust me, when you do a few laps of this car, it is absolutely incredible, giving it a 10 out of 10. Overall, heading into the 4th category, we can see that the G8K has just stolen the lead. And heading into category 4, we have Clearance. Where in last place, we have the Domination getting the 1 point. Now, the reason why it gets the 1 point is simply because it doesn't actually make it to the end. Now, I'm not doing the vertical ramp, I'm doing a slanted ramp, just because if we did the vertical ramp, then no real cars are going to make it to the end anyway. And in 5th place is the Yota. Now, as you can see, the Yota does get stuck on the 3rd step, but after a bit of momentum, it does end up getting to the end. The reason why it gets only here is because obviously it struggled on the 3rd step and gets a 5 out of 10 overall. Next, in 4th place is the Journeyman. Now, you think, oh, the Journeyman made it to the end, no real mistakes. The only problem about the Journeyman is because it's pretty much jumping up the steps. It does get a 7 out of 10 overall because it does end up completing the course though. And now in 3rd place with 4 points is the G8K. The G8K is pretty much the same as the Journeyman. It just doesn't jump as much as the Journeyman really, which basically puts it just ahead of the Journeyman, getting a 7.1 out of 10 overall. And in 2nd place is the full-size 5, getting 5 points. Now the full-size 5 is definitely better than the other cars, doesn't have to jump all the time, but does have to use a lot of RPM to be able to get up all these steps, getting a 7.5 out of 10. And in 1st place, a car that's been pretty much at the bottom the entire time, the Sentinel. Now the Sentinel does have the highest clearance out of all the cars and easily gets up the steps with no real problems, getting an 8 out of 10 overall on the clearance test. Now heading into the final round, we have 2 real competitors for the 1st place title, where the G8K is first with 20 points and the full-size 5 is 1 point behind on 19 points. Now, the final round is worth double points, where we head to category 5, the final round, the rally track. Now in last place on the track race with 2 points is the Domination. Now, this car has its flaws, it has its great points. Its flaws more rely around its speed, but its cornering is incredible. Its speed is the main thing that has let itself down throughout this whole video, where it's basically gotten last in not both speed tests, but pretty much came last in both speed tests. And cornering, it did end up coming second, which is pretty much the entire points grab that it's got in the entire video. And it came last in the clearance, so this car hasn't done much good when it comes to the points. But anyway, this car does come last on this track with the 2 points. As you can see, I'm not going to really waffle for the entire race for every single car. I'm just going to basically explain what every car has done the whole video and how well they've done. But this car eventually gets a time of 52.42 seconds on the track. Good stuff, Domination. Now in 5th place with 4 points, surprisingly, is the Sentinel. Now, this car is one of the faster cars out of the corners and the highest ground clearance car, obviously, as it won the clearance test. Now, this car has some pretty good high points, which is obviously the clearance test. But it's always been stuck in the middle of the pack the entire time. The Sentinel is actually quite a good car to buy. It's one of the newer cars in the game if you want something new. It's also not that expensive. Obviously not as cheap as, your Yotas, full-size 5s, those kind of trucks. But this car's definitely a good grab for a multi-purpose truck because the Sentinel is more of a car that's built into crawling, not as much racing. But this trophy truck does hold its own against all the other big names when it comes to trophy trucks. And the Sentinel does eventually get a time of 51.98 seconds on the track. Now, in 4th place with 6 points, just beating out the Sentinel, is the Yota. Now, the good things about the Yota is its price. It's quite a cheap car, one of the cheapest cars in the game. It's also one of the more underrated cars. You don't normally see this car doing anything, really. You don't see it doing racing, you don't see it doing crawling, derbying, anything. But this car's pretty much purely built for racing, so its trophy truck build I expect it to be pretty darn good. But going through the tests, it has downfalls, which is basically just it's not really that fast. It's not that good at cornering. It's just a mid in every different category. It's always just not the best in these categories. Obviously, it's better than like a lot of cars at racing, but when we put it against its own type, trophy trucks, it's obviously one of the worser cars on this list. But eventually, the Yota does get a time of 51.37 seconds on the final category, the track. Now, in 3rd place, the Journeyman. The Journeyman does seem to like this 3rd place position as it's gotten it 3 times throughout the video. Now, the Journeyman, to sum it up, is quite an unlucky truck. I know it's the newest truck in the game. It's really fast, it's really good, but it is just not as good as the full-size 5 and the G8K, which are our top 2 front runners. Now, this car, I would definitely recommend buying if you do not want to... If you just don't like the full-size 5, you don't like the G8K, I'd definitely recommend buying this. It's a great truck, and if you like new stuff, perfect. This is a great car for you. Now, this car does have its downfalls, which is more around its clearance. Not the best clearance-wise for this car, but if we're talking speed and cornering, this car is great. It may not show it on the results, but this car is something else when it comes to the cornering, and it gets a time of 50.77 seconds. Now, I decided not to do it a single race between these 2 cars, but I've basically done side-by-side the race of the G8K versus the full-size 5. Now, there is one mistake I make with each car at the same corner, but apart from that, if I were to practice and race these cars to my best of my ability, I reckon this would be one of the closest races ever. Not saying this isn't a close race, because it really is. Now, this corner was the one that I took a bit of a mistake on, but as you can see, the G8K does have a lead coming into the jump. But the full-size 5 speed really catches up to the G8K, and they're pretty much tied coming into the final corner, really, on this track, where the full-size 5 is a little bit ahead. But the G8K does corner a bit early and gets around the corner fine, and they both pretty much finish at the exact same time. So that really asks the question, what one is going to win? But first, let's have a look at the final rankings of all the other cars before we get to the last ones. Now, in last place on 12 points in this category is the Domination, sadly. Now, on 5th place with 13 points, 1 point ahead of the Domination, is the Yota. On 4th place with 16 points, 4 points ahead of the Yota, the Sentinel. And in 3rd place on 22 points, getting the bronze medal for this category, is the Journeyman. Now, this is the moment you've all been waiting for, guys. Finally, the 1st place car and the best trophy truck in the game, on 32 points with a time of 47.84 seconds, is the G8K, winning the best trophy truck. And in full-size 5 in 2nd place on 29 points, just 3 points behind with a time of 48.02 seconds, only 0.3 of a second in it. Anyways, guys, that'll bring it to the end of the video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and stay safe. See you guys.